It was very interesting to see an Asian market that is more mature versus an Asian market that is at its beginning, but they started at like high end. They didn't start it like us, where we went through the process of learning what a washed coffee is first, to a natural or to a normal, coffee that everyone can afford, and you try to roast it to make it taste better. I think it was interesting to see, different countries and being there. It's really an eye-opening experience. Actually, you're just gonna see the world from a different perspective.
This episode is proudly brought to you by Mapper Forward's workshop. It's time to become a coffee consultant. Learn how to diversify your revenue streams and create freedom from your day job while saying goodbye to that alarm clock forever by becoming a consultant within the coffee industry or directly to consumers who have shifted towards home brewing and home roasting. Protect your income from challenging times in the coffee value chain by taking this course today. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for details. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 1 of a brand new series with one of my most favorite people to have on the podcast, Nawar Adra from Stitch Coffee. Welcome to the podcast for the 6,000th time, Nawar.
I can't introduce myself anymore.
Yeah, every time you come on the podcast, you've got something new going on. So,
same guy. Sorry, guys. You gotta hear my voice again.
Well, everyone loves when you come on the podcast. You're a crowd favorite.
Thank
And
you.
one of the reasons you're a crowd favorite just to remind everyone, you're the owner of Stitch Coffee. You're the owner of Eco. You're based in Sydney. You have my favorite coffee brand in the world. And not only is it my favorite coffee brand, but the coffee's incredible. The coffee you guys select is amazing. The way that it's brewed, the way it's roasted, everything really hits every time. It's exactly what I expect every time I drink it. I'm lucky enough to have some with me here in Dubai, and it makes me very happy every time I drink it. But the other thing is I get people referring to your brand. So when they're looking to make changes in their coffee business, you're the benchmark for a lot of people. And why I am very happy about that is because I know that there are other brands that are benchmarks for people. And people say, I want to be like this company and I want to be like that company. And then I tell them, so do you know that that company is being built from venture capital? Or do you know that that company has got private equity in it? And I know yours is built by you and your team.
Thanks.
And so
the hard work.
The thing is, for people who listen to this podcast, they know that I get incredibly irritated by brands that lie to their customers and that lie to the industry. And, I love that yours is a brand that I can talk about without ever having to worry about any of that stuff. So now that I did the introduction for you.
More than enough. Woo, I'm out.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.
So this is the reason we're having this conversation is because Stitch is doing something very different. And it's been a long time coming. It's been something that is very interesting, and it's something that people have been contemplating themselves. A lot of people have been contemplating this. So why don't you tell people what Stitch has been doing this year that's a little different?
I think we've one thing that we really kind of established that we really want to be amazing in the current market that we're in, which is Sydney, and do an amazing job in our city where we're born, and we started the whole process. But at the same time, we looked at it as like, there's a lot of eye on Asia. Actually, there's a few articles. A lot of people are going to Asia, looking at it, at least contemplating it, trying to understand, how do I get there? What do I need? And all that. And we've been for the last 2.5 years, actually, trying to understand how do we get there. So it is taking us a long time. And I've actually spent more time in China that I've ever seen my mother for the last 10 years, probably, which is kind of sad. This is like, keep going back. So I've been to China this year, probably maybe 5 times.
Wow.
We participated in probably like 10 coffee festivals there. And it's very interesting because the amount of coffee festivals they have over there, it's ridiculous. I don't think any other country beat it by the amount of input they tried to create an industry. And also first time I've been to Tokyo. So it was a very kind of another place that was an eye-opening, and it was very interesting to see an Asian market that is more mature versus an Asian market that is at its beginning, but they started at like high end. They didn't start at like us, where we went through the process of learning what a washed coffee is first, to a natural or to a normal, coffee that everyone can afford, and you try to roast it to make it taste better. I think it was interesting to see, different countries, and being there, it's really an eye-opening experience. Actually, you're just gonna see the world from a different perspective.
Because is it right to say that, like, in Asia, Japan is like the Sydney, Melbourne of Asia, because it's got it's got a history of coffee in Japan, right?
Yeah,
a well-established industry over time.
100%. I think the thing is, I've only been to Tokyo, and I've been to I had like 2 days where I could roam around.
Okay.
And the rest was mostly at night, and we were in SCAJ the rest of our life in Tokyo. But it was good because I've seen, when you're part of this SCAJ, you're in the roaster kind of village. So you meet a lot of like young coffee roasters. You can see what's happening. And yes, like, speaking from my experience only within Tokyo and the SCAJ, a lot of the people that went back and started their own companies of either roaster or cafe or whatever it is, I think there's a majority of them, or a big number at least, that actually graduated from Melbourne and Sydney and went back and tried and started the process of, owning their own brands and all that sort of things. So it was very interesting because their palate and the way they do things in Japan, it's actually not far away from how we consume our coffee. Yes, they do a lot more filter than they do espresso, but that doesn't mean latte and milk-based beverage is not big in Japan comparing to China, And when you talk about China, that's something maybe down the track as we process in the conversation. China is a lot of countries in one.
I can't.
You can't talk about China and you can't just say China. You can't. You really need to talk about cities and different culture and different food and different way of living, and it's insane. Because we've visited probably 12 cities in China, so we went on a full-on tour. And when we go touring, we're like, in one time in 6 weeks, I visited and we did workshops. So it was interesting workshop in each city. And we learned so much about the culture there.
Wow.
And you really need to know where your coffee works and doesn't work. Some city would never accept the way you roast. They have a very different understanding of how they need to consume coffee, While in Japan, I think it's different. Japan, I think Japan is more about, we look at it visually first, and then we go to the flavor profile, or we go down to the other road of understanding. I think China is all about flavor first before anything else,
So Japan sounds a little bit like the Middle East. It sounds a little bit like Dubai.
Yeah. You can first access their heart by visually giving them a really something pretty first, like something that really opened their eyes and they're willing to give it a shot,
Whereas the Chinese, it sounds like you can't trick them. If it looks good but doesn't taste good, fuck you very much.
Yeah. They're very clinical. Like they will destroy you, because the niche market, they are trained certain way. While in Japan, it's much wider. The market is not too niche. They drink different type of coffee. They drink different style of coffee. Geisha for them is important, but they are aware of Rwanda. They are aware of other because it's more mature. So they do a lot more different origin. And China when we are in Shanghai festival, the Luzazwe, and everybody had geisha, like it was a geisha town. It was like Panama. Like it was so expensive. But that's a lesson learned also for the future, that, we learn a lot from certain experience being, if you're new and you're going into those big heavyweight, because Luzazwe is number one and it's the biggest coffee festival in China. So it's a lot of heavyweights goes in there. So you really need to know what sort of stuff you need to serve, what sort of origin you need to use. While if you go tier 2 cities, and so there's multiple tiers in China, you need to understand what tier the city is. And you got 5 cities or 6, maybe they're tier 1, then you have the rest tier 2, and then you have tier 3 cities. And they all have very different population, different people living there, different way of life, and different way of perceiving coffee. So
that leads us to the kind of heart of what we're going to talk about in this series, which is exploring what it is to run a company across borders, because you spent so much time. I remember the birth of this brand. You and I were standing at Espresso Machine and we were making coffees in Bondi, Sydney. And I remember the very first drawings of the branding of Stitch. And is it 10, 12 years yet? 10 years yet?
9.
9 years.
Almost 10, yeah.
Almost
Maybe
10
at
years.
some point.
And you were starting Stitch and I was starting Elixir, and we were still baristas. And I have watched you cultivate this brand with your own hands and try different things and grow it and have these huge, big visions. I remember all the different iterations of the boxes, and you go from a box that looks like a perfume box. You remember the hologram box? And then
hologram.
all the way to these stupid fucking animals that we're all now obsessed with.
That's
Folks,
funny.
when
I
Nawar
can't let it go anymore.
when Nawar came up with these animals for this brand, I'm like, what are you doing? This is just so stupid. But he's a visionary, right? Like, and this is why you have demonstrated that you are someone that can be trusted to see what other people cannot see about branding, right? I don't have an eye for that. I have an eye for business in that, like what people are going to take, the steps that people take. You have an exceptional eye for what culture and for what populations are going to be able to connect with brands. And it's been inspiring to watch you cultivate that over time. And so many times I would say it to you, I'm like, I don't think this is going to work. And you're like, no, watch, it will. And 100% of the time it does. And you're always ready to pivot and to make these decisions. So when you told me you were going into Asia, I knew this was going to be really exciting, because I hear a lot of people talk about, I'm going to go into a different state than what I'm currently in, or I'm going to go to Dubai, or I'm going to go and open in all of these different countries. A lot of people want to go into China and they don't understand. So this is an opportunity for anybody who is looking at all the shiny stuff out there and saying, I'm going to go and open my business in another country. I've done it twice now, and there's lots of things that you cannot see coming. So when we look at in this episode, we're talking about what you've been doing. The question I want to ask you is, when should you consider expanding into a new region? Because this is, a lot of people open their first brand, their first cafe, and they're like, okay, great, I know how to open a cafe. I'm going to go open my second cafe. Big mistake. Your first job is to figure out how to bring customers into the business before you opened your second cafe. But then people think that they're doing well. They get approached by somebody from Dubai or from China or from somewhere else, and they say, come open over here. Usually it's the wrong thing to do. But you as somebody who is doing this now and doing it well, when should somebody consider going into a new region?
I think there's multiple, factor for it to happen. But from, let's say, an economical kind of where you're at, let's say, in Sydney, for example, we kind of figure out that it's first like wholesale in here is probably one of the hardest things to break through.
Yeah.
We are doing really well in retail. We're really understanding the consumer behavior, and, we're producing product that works really well with their choices, so we kind of trying our best to understand more and more and cultivate that part of the business. The only time it's time to get out is if you got everything ready for you to go out, and that means you really need a brand, not a label.
Tell me more about that. You and I have had this conversation many, many times, and I'm not sure that people really understand the difference between a brand and a business, or a brand and a label. So help everyone understand the depth of that.
So let's say, for example, you are going overseas, right? And you want to showcase a product, and you only have a label that goes on a bag and looks really nice, but you don't have anything else. You don't have merch idea. You don't have story. You don't have anything to excitement for them to purchase other things than just the beans. You don't have anything to support the Panama or the Rwanda that you're trying to sell. Right. So it's really important to have a line of items that works with different people. So sometimes, for example, we might not be able to sell them the bags, but I'm able to sell them a mug, or I'm able to sell them a story. I'm able to sell them something that can get me into their mind. So later on, I can sell them something else, or some, you need multiple ways to introduce yourself. Because, for example, in let's say in Tokyo, right? We had a range of different clothing, and people didn't buy coffee, but they bought the clothing.
Wow.
Right. And people were interested in clothing, so they didn't buy this, but they buy the clothes. And then suddenly they will be curious about, okay, what if I try the coffee now because I think I love, do you get what I mean? Yeah. So it's very different than being just one-sided approach. So you really need to have layers and focusing on the core, which is, obviously you're a coffee roaster, but that's not the only way you can enter people's heart. You can enter people's heart from multiple layer. That doesn't have to be coffee. If they don't drink coffee, they can drink matcha. If they don't drink matcha, they probably drink chocolate. If they don't drink chocolate, they love chai,
Yeah.
Suddenly you're entering from the chai level, right? And everything is under your brand, everything is taking them back to your story so they can connect with other products you're trying to, get to them. And I think that's the difference between, just having a label and Panama Geisha and having other ways of penetrating.
Your brand, everyone I introduce to your brand, no matter what country it's in, immediately wants to touch it and play with it and read it and explore it, and they rave on about these fucking animals and they connect with them, right? And I want to know, is that an intentional part of you preparing yourself to go into another culture? Because I have found your brand to be something that does cross cultures. Is that a part of you recognizing ahead of time that the vision of what we want to do is global? Tell me more about that.
I mean, I always, the thing is, you don't know until you start going out there and exploring the world. Like, dang it, man, I could be here. And then you get excited. I visited Canada. I want to be in Canada. I visit Dubai. It's time to go to Dubai, right? But I guess you become a little bit mature when you started learning that the team that you need to get there is also important. It's actually
The
way more
infrastructure
important than
is
your
wild,
bread.
isn't it?
The infrastructure is actually the strongest part, and without them, you're nobody. It doesn't matter how much they want you. If you don't know how to get your product there, you don't know the hurdles, you don't understand logistics, you don't understand labeling, legal paperwork and labeling. Like, I can go through some challenges we went through, and someone else went through the same challenges where, which happy to talk about it in the next question. But I think it's important to have. Some people don't want to have a global vision, and it's okay. Some people I just want to roast coffee and have a nice little roastery, a couple of stores, and I'm happy, right? It's fine.
100%.
But I
There's
think
nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. As long as you can keep profitability and you feel, yourself fulfilled, that's all that matters, right? The success is different to ours, right? So, but for me, I always want to go around the world, I always want to have something that takes me around so I can, I'm curious,
Yeah.
I like it. I want to see why and why not. And if I put my heart and soul in it, I'm pretty sure it's going to be successful. A lot, takes time, but it eventually get there. And if it's not successful monetary, at least I learned the lesson, right? So either way, it's okay, So the animals, the way we did it is definitely, it's inspired by a lot of Asian culture. It's inspired by because our brand in Australia, people didn't get it at the beginning, what is this cartoon thing? It's not an Australian way of presenting coffee.
Folks, I wanted him to give them names. I wanted him to turn them into have personalities. I'm like, I want to connect with these fucking animals. Give me a reason to connect with the animals. And he would just shoo me off. He's like, sis, you don't know what you're talking about. Fuck off. I've got this, I promise.
They don't really, but later on when we started to say, okay, the cow story is, oat milk, or it has a bit of a sustainable message behind it. So we started to connect them with the sustainability first, by reminding you that, there is whales, there is the polar bears there to give you a bit of a message behind, but very subtle. We don't want to be those
hold on,
shouting out loud.
So tell me the story behind a fish sitting at a campfire with a bear or polar bear?
With a bear. No, it was a bear.
With roasting a marshmallow.
Roasting
is
marshmallow.
That?
I think the story was behind that was things that you don't imagine can come together, and which having a mocha steep bag, which is coffee and chocolate husk and nibs. You would never think of having a mocha in the middle of that you can actually have a mocha. You can have a black mocha, and if you want to put a little bit of milk, you can. So it's something a little bit more outside the thought process. And two things that you normally don't, as a coffee guy or a coffee person, you don't want to put them together.
You would never see a fish roasting a marshmallow sitting with and I have to tell you, of all the things that you've taught me, and there have been many things, our conversations have really, in the most beautiful way, challenged me and got me to think bigger and but the thing that you taught me the most is about risk. You taught me, you have this wonderful, sometimes gut-wrenching relationship with risk. I watch you take some risks and I want to grab you by the ear and say, what the fuck are you doing? Stop it.
Yeah.
And then there are times when I watch you take a risk and I think, this is so inspirational, because you are not only taking a risk to grow your business. I watch you take risks to learn and to And that, I think, has been the biggest change that I've seen in you over 10 years. In the beginning, it was, I'm going to take risks and I want to grow a business and I want to have something that I'm proud of. Now I watch you take risks because, and the best way I can describe it is this, you want to clear the path ahead of the baby that you nurtured. It's growing up and you want to provide it with every opportunity that it has to reach its maturity. And while it's got a long, long way to go, I have seen you go from being a brand new dad with a business to a really thoughtful parent. And it is, as someone who cares about you a lot and someone who considers you like a brother, it has been one of the most beautiful things to watch, seeing you decide that you're going to go into Asia and you're approaching it with such consideration for how is this going to facilitate the growing up of your brand. It's
100%.
inspiring. It's inspiring.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So in the next episode, folks, we're going to talk about the due diligence that needs to be done, because this is the hole. All of us who took brands into different countries, this is the hole you typically fall into and don't know how to get out of if you don't do it well. So join us for the next episode. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon, and stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.